Okay, right. I think we are ready. Yes, we are. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to South Asian Heritage Month's literary event with Anita Rani. And we are joined by the wonderful Nikita Gill and the wonderful Anita Rani. Anita Rani is a radio and television presenter and now Sunday Times best-selling author of The Right Sort of Girl, this incredible, powerful memoir. Hold up your books, everybody. This incredible, powerful memoir that is about belonging and identity and everything that that you wanted to tell your younger self. And it is inspiring South Asian girls and women up and down the country, and anyone who reads it, really. And Nikita Gill, I'm sure you're all aware of, a wonderful powerhouse, excellent poet who's curated 6 volumes of work, and her latest work, Where Hope Comes From, is about our poems of resilience, healing and light, something that we all need a little bit of in these really difficult and fractious times. I'm going to leave you in Nikita's very, very capable hands now. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. Thank you so much for your time. Happy South Asian Heritage Month, everyone. I'm sure you're in store for a treat. I will see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Oh my God, it is such a pleasure to be doing this with you, Anita. I just love you so much, and your work is gorgeous. And this book, and I just say to start with, this is the book that I needed in my teens. It's the book I needed in my 20s. It's the book I need now. Like it's literally been the mate that I desperately needed growing up. So thank you. Thank you for writing it.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. You know, I think you're an absolute badass. What you do, how openly you speak, the way you speak from the heart, and everything you do is, I find, inspiring. So this is brilliant. This is perfect. Yes, we'll get the love in.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
I love this book. So I've read it for the second time because I wanted to prep for our conversation. And there's so much you get out of a second reading of the book as well, which is making me excited for a third reading. So it's like it's reached the point. Like Brown Baby for me was that book that I carry everywhere with me. Now it's going to be The Right Sort of Girl. I'm going to carry it everywhere with me. Whenever I need that little boost of empowerment, it's going to go everywhere with me. So can I just start with my first question for you? Because I have so many.
Let's do it. Let's go for it.
So can I just start by saying, one of the things that I notice you do in this book, and I did mention it to you before in the chat, I love James Baldwin's work. And the reason I love James Baldwin's work is that he holds up a mirror, you know, and he kind of talks about the problems that are within the community by holding up that mirror. But what he doesn't do is sit and sermonize and go, oh, this is how you fix all of those things, you know. And I love that you have trusted your readers so much. And your work in this book really reminds me of Baldwin's that way. You hold up that mirror to the community. So can we talk a little bit about that?
First of all, Nikita, if your opening sentence is comparing me to Boulder, I don't know what to do with that. That's immense. I mean, first of all, wow. Secondly, wow again. But yeah, I guess in terms of holding up what we do to the community. So when I sat down to think about how I was going to write this book, because it started out as a childhood memoir. And then it very quickly, I realized that, you know, how do I write something that is honest and truthful and doesn't pull any punches, right? So if I'm going to talk about what it means to be a South Asian girl in Britain, and yes, identity is what it's all about. It's also about race. It's about class. It's about gender. It's about all those things. But it's not just some happy skippy, and then I was born in Bradford, and then I turn up, and then I'm in London. And of course, everybody knows that when you work in a white environment, I'm going to have to tackle what that means. But for me, you know, as born as a brown girl, I was discriminated against from day one, from within my own home. Not necessarily my own home, but the extended kind of community. So, yeah, that was like an interesting point to start, because I thought, I can't shy away from this. How do I talk about it without doing down my community, because I love it, but also saying the truth? And I started by talking to my mum and saying, look, I need to talk about some stuff, some stuff you might have said to me. And she actually said, look, say it for me. Say it for all the women that have not been able to say it. And I'm really glad that the reaction has been overwhelming. And I'm glad that you think I'm not sermonizing, because I didn't want to do that. Nobody wants to be told. And also, I don't have the answers. Who has the answers? I just have an experience. I've just lived through an experience, and I've observed what's happened to people around me, particularly the women. And I just wrote it hoping that it would resonate with other people. And it turns out that I didn't live this experience alone. Yeah, and I've called some stuff out, and it sounds like, and it feels like it's time.
It really does. Like that,
Yeah.
you know, what you just said about writing for women and for like the women in your family. I love the way you write about the women in this book. You know, the women in your family, the women who surrounded you. It really feels like such a love letter to them as well, as much as your younger self.
Absolutely. And I never expected it to be such a love letter. And you probably know this. I don't know about your process, but, you know, this is my first real attempt at doing some proper writing. And I absolutely loved the creative process. And I found it incredibly cathartic. And often I would find myself just tapping away and just letting the words and the stories flow, as well as the tears. There was laughter as well, but there was a lot of tears. But the women, you know, I thought I'd spent a lifetime being angry with the women in my life, because, and I say it in the book, like I grew up feeling that I don't want to be them. I looked at them as a child and I thought, you know, you are defeated and you are put upon, and you know, the life that you live and the lack of choice is everything I didn't want. And actually I knew this anyway. It was through kind of making that Who Do You Think You Are and various stages that I've got to this point where it's like, no, these women must be honored. Their stories have to be told. And if we don't tell them, no one's going to tell them, right? Because these are the forgotten women, and they will be forgotten. And also our story is so unique and special, you know, that story of migration and this first generation of people who have landed in a foreign land and started from scratch, like, you know, our origin story.
It really felt like such a beautiful story in so many ways, because of the way that you talk about your parents. You know, there's so much love there, and there's so much. I mean, it made me miss my mom. I called my mom because because of the relationship you have with your mother, the way you call her your warrior queen, you know, but at the same time, you do acknowledge that they are flawed people.
100%. And I think that comes with becoming an adult, doesn't it? Where you start analyzing your upbringing. You kind of first, when you're a tiny baby, you put these people on a pedestal and they can do no wrong. And then all they're doing is ruining your life. And then all of a sudden you become an adult and realize that their upbringings were complicated. And especially our mothers, my mother certainly didn't have any choice in who she married. They had an arranged marriage, and that was it. And it's like, that to me is, you know, I say in the book, it's within one generation, it's almost like we've skipped 5 generations. The lives our mothers led and our grandmothers, so the lives we're leading and the choices we have. And I don't just mean in Britain, this is happening across the world, right? The rate of development and what young women want from their lives. And so, yeah, I had to tell their story, and they are the kind of heroes of my book, because of them. Like they create us, you know. You kind of, yes, there's a lot of fighting, and there's a lot of fighting for what you want when you're a young woman who wants to have choice in your life and make decisions for yourself. But at the same time, my parents definitely gave me the ability to go out there and achieve. And I had to the book had to start with my grandfather, and then I had to tell my parents' story before I got to me. It didn't make sense to just start from me, because I felt people need to understand the history before they get to me. Just recognize that no one's been talking about us and our experience.
Which is why this book feels so unique and so special. Like it's got the same vibes that I got when I read Good Immigrant in 2015. It really gave me a sort of feeling of home, because I'm the only one from my family here. I'm like a first generation immigrant who's been here for the last 10 years. I do like to irritate people and go, no, I'm an expat.
Yes. Why are we not expats, right? Brits abroad are all expats, but everyone else is an immigrant. Hilarious.
You should see people's faces when I say that. They're like, what? What do you mean you're an expat? But I really appreciated the way you spoke about, your grandfather coming here in the 60s, and what a hardworking man he was, what a hardworking woman your grandmother was, and again, like, they reminded me so much of my own grandparents back in India, because they're so set in their ways. You can appreciate them for who they are, especially when you're older, but they're so set in their ways. Things have to be a certain way and go a certain way, which is a very Punjabi household thing. I love that. I love that about the book, how open you are about the Punjabi household and its mechanisms.
Yeah. I mean, I think people who read the book can tell I'm quite a proud Punjabi. I mean, it's like, how do you talk about the South Asian experience? Of course, there's times where I talk about being South Asian and Asian, and so much of it is universal, right, to the Asian experience. But that Punjabiness is definitely a distinct cultural identity, right? Whatever state you come from, there's a distinct identity that comes with it. And I say at the beginning of the book that we are the Irish of India, like culturally identical to the Irish. And we truly are. And I don't just mean the sort of drinking, and we are a rural community. We come with trauma, and there's lots of guilt, and big families. We've traveled, like the Irish community have traveled, and also we're people of a divided land, right? So there's a lot of similarities. And also we have a great sense of humor, and we are big party lovers. And but I also put that in there as a device for people to just switch and get it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, this is for people who need a quick lesson, like, how do you get what Punjabis are? Here you go, the Irish of India. That sums it up. But what comes with that rural upbringing, like rural culture, and that migrant culture that we have, is, we do things a certain way, and we have a very ingrained culture and a very patriarchal world, even though our women are incredibly strong, and they are strong. When you have to work the fields, these women are not to be messed with. These women rule the roost. However, it's very complicated, isn't it, Nikita? Because we have really strong women, but we also are very patriarchal. And so I didn't shy away from saying about my grandfather being quite a difficult character, because they landed in this land that was not theirs. They didn't speak the language, and they're at the bottom of the pile. These men who, in their own, turn up, grunt and gruff and get everything done for them. But obviously they are not treated like that. And so they all met in the pubs, and they used to drink and play cards and then go home. And my granddad brought home the fear, and the relationship between my grandparents and my dad, who was only 4 when he came here, and his siblings there's a complete cultural divide, right? My grandparents didn't speak any English. I don't know how they communicated, because my dad's Punjabi was terrible when he married my mum, like really bad. My granddad would come home, and all the children would scarper out of the living room, right? Just leave him to it. It was, I didn't want to pretend that I needed to connect with people to say, look, I'm from a really dysfunctional family. And I think sometimes, and this was something I felt right at the beginning, I think we've been made to feel so much shame for various reasons growing up, right? Within our own cultures, when we go and step outside the front door, we're made to feel shame about who we are. And I just thought, I'm just sort of sick of shame. So I just want to put it all on the page. And also to talk about how dysfunctional my family is, it's basically saying to people that, when people see successful people, I think they sometimes presume you come from a real place of privilege. And this is saying that, no, I'm just like everyone else. And actually, and also you can laugh at trauma. a little bit.
It's I think that's a big thing about being Punjabi, being Sikh as well, is that you do learn to laugh at the pain, because otherwise you will cry, and we're not
Yeah.
allowed to cry. That's something you touch on in the book as well, is like, in fact, I have like an entire question about the fact that you talk about South Asians and mental health, and I can't really begin to count the amount of times I've been told, even from my own mom, like, don't be depressed, or just go for a walk, you'll be fine.
Same,
You know.
same. My mum is like the most positive person on earth. And even to this day, if I'll ring her and say, oh, maybe a bit of a bad day. No, remain positive. Like, and I love it. And I get it. I get it because, you know, they have an experience of life that we don't, right? And they have what they've come through and what they've survived. 2 generations ago, Nikita, we were living through, our ancestors were living through partition, right? The world was so completely different. They've seen the worst trauma and they got on with it. And so I understand, but at the same time, it's just not healthy burying things and not talking about it. And, you know, as much as it is a survival tool and it has got them so far, we just can't continue that because it doesn't help. And we know that because of the rate of alcoholism, domestic violence, suicide, everything that we have within our community that's not spoken about. Mental health, we don't talk about it. So, you know, this is about, you know, they talk about breaking the cycle. You know, I think our generation needs to start breaking that cycle now. And it can only be empowering. It can only make us stronger.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the things which I really loved about the book, was how you spoke about breaking these cycles and giving these very real examples. There's one scene that stands out to me so much because I've read it over twice now. And it's a scene of your mum arriving at the airport. She's 23 years old. She's got married to your dad. And then she goes to your, like, the house, you know, where your grandfather is, where your father's entire family is. And you talk about how Punjabi men can be quite loud, but it's hard to tell whether they're happy or upset, right? And she's this young bride, and she doesn't know about your grandfather's temper. And because she's such a firecracker and such a strong woman, she goes and she tries to, like, calm him down because he's angry. And that scene just stands out in my head. This young bride in a brand new country, trying her best and really calmly trying to calm, because that is the role that Indian women are put in, that brown women, South Asian women are put in, the peacemakers, the pacifiers, at even the cost of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. My mum, that scene is pure Bollywood. I'm laughing, but it's tragic. And I'm laughing because I've laughed with my mum about it. And she's like, Nitu, because my pet name is Nitu. She's like, Nitu, it was drama, just drama. From day one, it's been drama. I'm like, yeah, mum. Yeah, so she's just day one in her bridal regalia. She's sitting in the attic with all my buas, my aunts, and they're all looking at their new puppy. And yeah, there's a big old fight happening downstairs. And my mum goes downstairs to try and tell my granddads that. And she, you know, holds her hands and she's got a galide on and a mehndi and the lot. And I say, yeah, it would have worked, but she was 20 years too late. You know, it was already, this is it. Welcome to your new life. And then again, you're right about the women being told that they are the ones to kind of be the peacemakers, because my granny then jumped in and was like, you know, what are you doing? The new bride has just arrived. Behave yourselves. I mean, I said I feel like within the Punjabi culture for sure, and it probably extends to a lot of South Asian culture, like men have been allowed to just behave like toddlers forever. They can kick, they can shout, they can scream, they can bawl, they can throw, they can do what they want. And women are the ones who have to then just be around them tidying things up. And I know this isn't everyone's experience. And I know this before anybody says, you know, of course, not every household's the same. And I take my time to explain that in the book, that within each household, there's a different culture and there's all of these things. But what I've seen is that the men are allowed to behave in the most appalling ways. and women just deal with it.
And pick up the pieces. I find that line very poignant, because as you see it over and over again in the book, how women are expected to pick up the pieces, why they're expected to pick up the pieces. You've really done a very very insightful analysis into what it means being a South Asian woman specifically, which is why I've been like handing this book like out to every South Asian woman I know. I'm like, please read this because you need this. Like, it's one of the most powerful things to see your own experiences reflected back at you like that. And again, that's something you talk about, like representation for us as South Asian women specifically hasn't been very high or very strong growing up. And you speak about how even, brown and black children, we write or draw white children in our books because it's been centered so much for us. That is treated as a central identity. And there was something, I think there's a void in me that had been unfilled because these very specific experiences, which are about being a South Asian woman, haven't been discussed until your book. Like,
yes, you're so right. And someone else, about quite a few people have said to me, it's like we've all known this stuff and we've had maybe little conversations within ourselves. And someone said to me, I bumped into a neighbor of mine on the street, and he's like, Anita, I was talking to my cousin about the book, and we were like, we never even talked about this stuff amongst ourselves growing up. Like, we all know it, but we've just been, I don't know what it is. It's like we have been this collective silence. And even I, it took me to my 40s to sit down to write this book. And I thought, what would happen if I just said it? Right? What would happen? And the reason I found that I was able to say it and say it in a way that I felt confident saying it, because it takes a lot to say this stuff, is obviously I spoke to my mum and my husband, to say that I'm going to say some stuff. I hope you don't mind. But also I thought, I'm writing this for my 16-year-old self, right? And my 16-year-old self is you. It's whoever's watching. It's the 16-year-olds around the country. It's everyone. It's the 79-year-old uncle that messaged me to say he loved my book. It's everybody, right? Who needs to hear it. And I needed to be honest with that, because my 16-year-old self knows what the score is, right? She's living it. So I couldn't lie to her. I had to call it out. Like, yes, let me tell you, what you're witnessing is bullshit. And actually, this is being put on you, and it's going to really affect you for your entire life until you wake up and realize, oh my God, this is madness. And I have power, and I can empower. And that's what this book's about.
And I think that comes across so clearly. And that's what it was one of the questions I actually had for you. That was going to be the first question. I was like, no, I think we'll go into this question. And it was basically about how vulnerable you've been in this book and how honest you've been in this book, to the point that I would call it a taboo busting book, right? Because of how honest you have been. Did you feel, I don't know, there's a feeling that I have when I write my poetry, because I'm expected to be very vulnerable and honest all the time. And sometimes it feels very exposing.
Yeah. So this is a new adventure, stepping into my vulnerability. Definitely not somebody who has been very comfortable with it. And I think it's come about for a number of reasons. Just growing up a bit. I think living through the last 18 months, living in a pandemic, I think reading your work, listening to conversations that are taking place amongst young people generally, Black Lives Matter. It felt like the time was right to talk honestly about, like, what am I afraid of? Like, it was a question I had to myself, like, what am I afraid of? And I felt I'm not actually afraid. And also, I've always been really fascinated by people who are able to deal with shame publicly and own their shame. Like, Oprah is massive. I mean, she's a legend, right? She's just an amazing hero, but her capacity for saying everything about herself, owning shame and empathy is something that I've always been in awe of. And I thought, what would happen? What's the worst that could happen? also, you know, I've read amazing works by other women, like, you know, Caitlin Moran, who is just a hero, right? She's the first, like, she is, you know, a pioneer in terms of ripping the shame. Let's just talk about it. Giving zero fucks. Sorry, I saw everyone. It's not the BBC, so I'm going to get away with it. My parents keep telling me I'm swearing too much, but it's quite nice. But yeah, okay, so she talked about periods in her first book. And I remember reading that, and I was like, oh, how is she talking about periods so openly? And also thinking, that's really not my experience. You know, my experience was just full of shame. And so, you know, I thought, sod it, you know, girls want to hear this stuff. Young women now are having conversations. They're going to places that I never did. So I need to be honest and truthful. And it's really liberating. Vulnerability. I wasn't expecting to be quite as vulnerable as I have been, I must say. I really wasn't. I've talked about things that I didn't think I would speak about, but it's okay. I feel like comfortable in myself and enough to be able to share it.
But this is what we needed. Your vulnerability has meant so much, because it has done this thing where, especially that entire chapter about puberty, where you say you don't talk about it, and like you don't learn how to deal with it because no one's talking about it. Like, so I love that, because I'm like, oh my God, that's so true. It's like sex education for South Asian kids. Like, it's literally like someone pointing a finger at you going, you over there, whatever you're thinking, don't do it. That's
no
sex education for South Asian.
That's it. People keep talking to me about this series, Married at First Sight. There's an Australian version. Like, I'm like, if that was an Indian version, it'd just be called Marriage.
Yeah.
Obviously not now. And I know that I might, like, you know, but definitely for
It's true. It's true.
Marriage. Yeah. I was just thinking about marriage, and it just, yeah, you know, I also observed the lives of my dad's sisters who had it really tough. You know, they grew up in the 80s in Britain, and young women in the 80s around me had it really difficult. They were the real pioneers. And actually, a lot of women in their 50s have got in touch with me who read the book, who now have daughters in their 20s. This is brilliant. Like, you know, mums and daughters reading the book at the same time. And they're like, we are the daughter that ran away from home. We are the one you're talking about. I used to hear it all the time. I used to hear this phrase over and over again, Kuri Karodorgi, you know, she's run away. And I'd be like, oh, she's run away from home. And then you realize, no, she hasn't. She's just left. She's just made a choice. She just didn't do what you wanted her to do. It's very difficult.
It's funny because you speak about how this is treated differently with boys, South Asian boys and South Asian girls. With South Asian girls, we've always run away from home. We've done something wrong. We brought shame on the family. But I know lots of South Asian men who are married to white women and aren't treated like that at all.
All my family. I mean, I list it. Like, I'll tell you. I mean, like, tons. I've got so many aunts and sisters-in-law from various cultures, and it's amazing. But yeah, the daughters, we are the pride and the shame of the family, Nikita. We carry this. I say it like this. You know it from when you're tiny that this is it. You have the pride. You have to, for your entire family, you carry this burden. And then interlaced with that is that complicated relationship we have with our mothers. And if you know your mother's experience hasn't been that pleasant, and she's in a family where she's finding it really difficult, you know, all of those things, just add on the layers and layers and layers. And for the, you know, eldest daughters in South Asian families, there's a lot that we carry. There's a lot. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it is something you touch on in the book that really triggered me. When you speak about being the oldest South Asian daughter in a family, you basically play a bunch of roles, including marriage counselor. Yeah. I was like, oh, she's talking about me.
Yeah, right. You're the marriage counselor, because that's it. What is that? It's because, you know what? It's because our mothers couldn't go anywhere else. Because they couldn't talk to their, you know, my mum's father died 6 months before she got married, and then she moved to the UK. And then it's, the last thing my nanaji said to her was, beta, you've got to go and make it work. That's it. You just get on with it. And these women are like landing in Bradford. They land in Bradford, and really kind of gritty, not working class Punjabi families, and they've just got to make it work. And then they have these beautiful children, and their babies become their worlds. And and then there's these daughters grow up, and we take a lot. And South Asian women are amazing. What I come to, like, honestly, it's just made me, so much from this book. I'm like, wow, we're amazing.
Really are. Like, it is one of those things where you speak about this, but as well, it's the shame that we carry for our mothers as well. It's the trauma that we carry for our mothers, but it's the trauma that they have been carrying for their mothers and generations before them.
Yes.
So to love them and to be protective of them, we are very connected, because it's a very strange relationship, right? On one hand, they are the ones putting shame.
And we're connected. Yes. And on the other hand, you're exactly that. That's the shame, but we are also their protectors. And you're so right to bring in the generations, because it isn't just about us and our mothers. It is generations deep, right? We are the survivors, right? If you think about it, we exist because I remember going to see my great grandmother, and it's in the book, on my dad's side. My grandfather was an only son. Then my dad was born after many years, and he was really prayed for. And then me and my brother were born, and we went to see my great grandmother, and she was like, you are miracles. The fact that you exist, the fact that my bloodline exists, right? That was like, whoa, it was quite mystical and magical. And she had a twinkle in her eye, and she was a big worshipper of Kali Ma. So there's lots of like stories around her. Yeah, we love her. Malavi Devi, her name was. What a name. But this intergenerational trauma is really interesting. It's quite a fascinating subject. I don't know enough about it, but I was definitely triggered. Like there was a shift in who I am when I went to make my Who Do You Think You Are, and told the story of partition, and then went to do the partition program. That is when I fundamentally recognized how little I knew about what it means to be a Punjabi woman, and how there are no stories about who these women were. And the stories we're told are told through the men, through their prism. And it's dark and complicated, but I just didn't buy that all these women were, it's very dark. It's very dark. What we are told about partition and how the women went to their deaths willingly, I found it really difficult to comprehend.
That chapter was really, really moving, but really triggering. And I'm so glad you included it in the book, because it needs to be heard. But the part where you talked about Preetham Kaur, your Nanaji's first wife, that particular chapter where you spoke about the violence specifically visited upon women, and how women were traumatized, and that very specific kind of violence, which is, it just made me sit over there and think, my God, misogyny really runs so deep, and we have so much unlearning to do.
So much. And, we talk about worshipping goddesses and putting our mothers and our sisters on a pedestal, but none of that means anything if we have this brutal, animalistic, misogynistic violence. The minute anything goes wrong, that's it. It's the women. And I don't want to shy away from it, right? These are conversations that need to happen. They have to happen. And also, I had to honor these women by telling that story. I really had to honor our ancestors by talking about what they went through and who they were, and that there are so many names that aren't spoken about. Because her story is not told at all. And again, writing this book, talking about that first generation of women moving to Britain and I talk about them sewing in my mum and dad's factory and that trip to Rhyl where we take them to Wales. And, you know, if I felt like I have to tell their story, I have to explain that these women were the linchpin. Otherwise, they're going to be forgotten, just like the partition women, forgotten. Nobody talks about them. And there's no commemoration anywhere. So sad.
It's bizarre as well, because like when you put the numbers in the book, it always hits me so hard because it feels like I forget each time how many women were kidnapped or raped or murdered, and the way that your gran spoke about them to you. You know, there was something the trauma was so ingrained, it was very matter of fact. That's how my grandmother speaks about it. You know, very matter of fact, very like, yeah, so many women died. An excess amount of women like died, like some of them had this happen to them, and you're just looking at them kind of going, oh my God. Like, and that was just something that you just lived through as a teenager.
And accepted about what happens to women. It's so complicated, isn't it, Nikita? I feel like this book is just scratching the surface. It's not even scratching it. It's just like, we need to do.
But you've done so much with the book, because it's talked about things that I have never discussed other than like with another friend. You know, we don't really talk about this stuff at all. One of the things I really appreciated as a queer woman is that you mentioned how hard it is to be LGBTQ and brown. Like those two things like cannot exist together for a really long time. I didn't have LGBTQ elders. Like, we lived in India. Article 377 did such a number on us as queer kids. Like, I came here to find queer elders. It just, you know, like the fact that you're disowned by your family it's really hard to talk about that as queer people and queer brown people. People are just not open about it at all.
At all. There is no space. There's a complete denial, I would say, Nikita, actually, about the existence of queer identity within the South Asian community. I mean, it is changing. And this is where social media is at its best, because people can find their communities. That is where, you know, I think social media has been amazing, that you can find your peers and people who have the same experience as you. But it's so necessary, these conversations. Did you see all the stuff that Alok Menon's been saying recently online? Yeah, I mean, amazing. Yeah, exactly them. Sorry. Just completely shifting the thinking that what is this binary constructs, and what is gender identity, the whole thing. I mean, I feel like we're living in a really exciting time for these conversations. Thankfully, they're happening now. I mean, Absolutely. It terrifies a lot of people, but as I say in the book, we have to move on. We have to move forward.
It's progress or perish, right? Progress or perish. Like, you can't go backwards. You can only go forward. But it's something that you say in the book, and this is like one of the big things that I give people this book on. People are not going to like you because you challenge their position, like what they've been comfortable with in their lives. And it's what you've done with your career, and it's what you've done as a human being. And I really admire that and respect that about you. And it comes across so clearly in this book. You know, it really does. And I think that's the heart of the book, really.
Drive and determination and tenacity. But then, you know what? South Asian women are the most highly educated group in this country, because we recognize that we're not going to get it handed to us. And my God, we have bossed it. Like, I know so many amazing brown women. I know some more. Okay, brown guys, white girls, all of you, you're all great. But let me just take a minute to talk about brown women. Like, because of what we've had to endure growing up, and then you step outside your front door and people still don't get you, and they've got no interest in getting you because they're just happy with their preconceived idea of what an Asian woman is. Not very interesting. arranged marriage, blah, like nothing else. We're not multifaceted. We're not multidimensional. And it is, I mean, at your loss, right? Because these South Asian women are, despite all of that, are still achieving. And I'm, okay, success is measured in different ways, but, they are still going out there and being remarkable, and with dignity and integrity. And that's really incredible.
It's true. It's what you say in the book as well. I know I keep bringing the book. I've spent so much time with your words. I just keep talking about it over and over again because it's such a good book. I can't begin to explain how needed it is. It should be a staple in every South Asian household. All I'm saying is, you say this in the book, how many of us kind of are under the threat of the Illuminati?
I can't believe we've taken this long to bring up the Illuminati.
I love it. I loved it. I love that you said the Illuminati should have done the track and trace. I agree. They should have.
KGB, CIA, MI5, and the Illuminati.
Yes.
Their business is your business. Honestly, my God, yeah. I mean, those bits I could make fun, right? I could have a real giggle with the Illuminati, just the anti-network. Just turn up, and they want like, what do you do? How old are you? Biodata. Like, I'm 16. Get a life. Well, and and so I really enjoyed writing those bits because there's hours of fun doing the Illuminati at weddings with zero political correctness. Girl is so dark, boy is so fair. La 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 la. Okay, all of that. But actually, it is also a really mad, terrifying control method because they are this sinister, invisible force that my, parents will say, oh, don't do this because they'll say so-and-so will. I'm like, who is so-and-so? That auntie that comes around and eats burfi all day long. She is the so-and-so who's going to make my life hell.
It's like when they say log kya kehte hai, they mean the Illuminati kya kehte hai, right?
Like, Illuminati. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what they mean. It's just, I love those bits about the Illuminati because it's true. Like sometimes you'll have an argument within the house with your mom and some auntie somewhere will know about it and you're just like, how did you find out?
Yeah, amazing. And it is this control mechanism, and they know about everything, but it's just their duty, they just, it's funny. And but it's dangerous. It's dangerous as well because we can laugh and joke about it. And there's hours of humor and we have to be able to laugh. But, as we were talking about just parents not being able to accept their children for who they are, like, I talk about parents not being able to accept their LGBTQ plus children. I also talk about, and this is the truth, and maybe people watching this will know people like this, never mind anything else, someone from a different caste won't be accepted. And I've known people who've been disowned because the guy was from a different caste. Oh my God, he's the same person. He's a Punjabi, speaks the language, like literally something his ancestors did have made you disown your child. I mean, and what is it? Is that the parents who don't feel they want to have a relationship with their child? Or is that this community pressure that is put on the parents that is saying you have done something wrong?
Yeah.
That is what the system is baffling me. Because I don't believe any parent really wants to disown their child. That's really hard I say in the book that I don't believe there's any such thing as unconditional love in South Asian communities, especially for young girls. Everything is conditional. If you do what we tell you, then you're good. Anything, if you step out of line, then you're out.
Which is again, like something which I feel like no one talks about. You speak about this existential dread that you had, which I think all South Asian girls have growing up. Like there's so many conditions put, not just on the love of our parents, but also who we are allowed to be as people. You talk about freedom. Freedom is for everyone, except if you're a South Asian girl, then only your parents decide what freedom is for you. I love that bit that you spoke about freedom that way, because that is exactly how it was like for me before I came to this country and live here by myself.
Yeah. It's sad, isn't it? It's really sad. And I fully understand that our mothers had it even worse and their mothers, but we are where we are now. And like the whole book in a way is about freedom. It's about a little girl wanting to express herself, find her voice, be in a place where she'd just be free to do what she wanted to do. And it's the whole book. And I also say, you know, they talk about girls wanting to run away all the time, how it was some terrible thing. But actually, this running away sounds great. Like all I wanted to do was run away. I was like, God, I don't want to stay here. Not with you guys. I mean, you're amazing and everything, but I'm happy. I'll run away. But yeah, freedom isn't, you know, freedom is so, everything is conditional, everything. And and it's really tricky. It's really tricky. And a part of me felt that this book isn't needed because maybe the next generation have it much easier. But the sad thing is, I don't think it is any easier. I think there's still the same problems within families. Well, we know there are. And also I'm really direct about the levels of control as well. You know, of course, my parents are very liberal in many respects. But you don't know the type of parents you're going to get. You can get the ones that will lock you in a room, that will brutalize you, and the other extreme, you know, there's serious subjects. And again, how do you talk about that in a public forum?
I love that you did talk about all of those things. But one of the biggest things as well about this book was the humor. You made it so warm and friendly. And it's like someone has taken my hand and gone, it's okay, we can talk about these things. And that's what I loved about it, is that I felt like, oh, we can talk about these things now. And this is why I was so excited about this conversation, because we're going to go there. We're going to go there.
We are going there.
Multiple times where I punched my fist in the air going, yes, Anita, drag them.
Illuminati, we're taking you down.
We're taking you down.
Taking it down, like colorism. Oh my God, just body shaming, puberty, like everything. I just like, to be a girl is a shame but manageable, but being a woman, well, no one wants to deal with that. And it's like, well, you know, some of us have to deal with it because we are. like we need to be. And there are some amazing, powerful female voices around. I feel like we are living in a really good time to use our platform. And finally, and I think it's also because I've worked to get here to where I am, and all of a sudden it's a combination of things. The pandemic for sure. Now being in my 40s. Also, I could continue stories about some chai and burfi. Yes, please, and a samosa, thank you, with ketchup. Yeah, it's time that we own it now. And I think we need to talk. I think that's what the control is as well, to keep us away from each other, to stop us having these conversations publicly, because that gives us power, right?
Right.
If all of a sudden we are women discussing this stuff and calling it out, that makes us really powerful. The sisterhood is strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what makes the patriarchy so uncomfortable, which is why you talk about this, women are pitted against women. Women are used to uphold the patriarchy. You know, it could come in the face of a woman that you really love, this upholding of the patriarchy. And I love that you said that, because we talk about women upholding the patriarchy who are other. We don't say that they are usually women we love in our own families, which is why they have that power. I love that. I thought that was such a pertinent point, and you really got to the heart of it.
Thanks, Nikita.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reaction has been overwhelming, right? This is beyond anything. And it's those conversations, it's that reaction, it's the people saying, women getting in touch with me via my DMs on Insta saying, oh my God, finally I'm seen. I've had some people crying, leaving me messages. And it's like, yeah, let these conversations happen. Take it, create a book club, start this conversation, get your girlfriends together, talk about periods and boyfriends. Oh my God. Let me tell you, right? I'm like, one thing, I'm calling out the Illuminati. I'm talking about my culture and da. But I was like, I'm actually going to talk about white boyfriends. That was like the scariest bit. Like, Mum, I've said some stuff, okay? Auntie Bimla might know some stuff about me that you might be uncomfortable with.
But it was so needed. Like white boyfriends was a conversation that like people have white boyfriends. They don't talk about it at all.
Oh, no. I mean, never mind white boyfriends, just boyfriends. Like, what do I say? You know, our parents would be much happier if we have no social life whatsoever. The only way you have a social life is to lie.
It's true.
We just lie to our parents.
It's absolutely true. Oh my God, look at all these lovely comments coming
Hello,
in for
Sunita.
you.
Oh, so nice.
Yeah. You are an amazing writer and you are an amazing person. And like you've really done something so special by writing this book. So, I have to say, that's really lovely. Thank you, William.
Thank you, William. Yeah, Nikita's amazing. Like, honestly, I've been looking forward to talking to you for so long. You are that generation I'm talking about. You are changing the landscape, your words, your poetry, your vulnerability, and you're like, I often talk about like this like younger generation, and you are at the forefront of that. You are so strong in your identity and you inspire me. I have to say this, like you've inspired me to say to actually go there and talk about my truth, because why not, right? Why not?
Honestly, thank you for saying that. I've been such a fan for so long that this means a lot to me. But
you're great.
There are bits in the book that you speak about that I really was so pertinent to my own journey, and which was, you speak about how you are in London now and you are working, at the BBC, and you're the top of the pops, you're doing all of that. And you're like, oh, I can't believe I've managed to do it. I've done it, kind of thing, And that's how I feel. Like I lived in New Delhi and like I had no social life at all. And now I'm here and I'm doing this and I'm meeting my heroes. And like, I can't.
Yeah, I mean, this is to say to people, like, do it, pursue your dream, like, absolutely go out there. And like, it took a lot, it takes a lot. And the second half of the chapter, talking about moving to London and navigating a white workspace, that was actually the harder bit for me to write than the stuff about calling out my culture and the things I've grown up with and making that funny. To actually openly discuss how I feel as one of the few brown women in a very white industry was really tricky. How do I say these things in public without being told that I've got a chip on my shoulder or that, I'm ungrateful? And you just got to own it. So, I'm sick of being told I need to be grateful, because we don't need to be grateful all the time. Like, we've worked hard. We have a reason to be here. Like, we are here because, this country was built on the backs of our ancestors and we were invited, and we know all this stuff, and these conversations need to happen, and we work bloody hard, right? We work hard, and our parents told us to keep our heads down and just keep going. And now we are here. We have the right to own it a bit. I feel like my shoulders have gone back a bit and my feet are grounded, but it's taken me a while to get there. Even I recognize that I've, found it tricky.
Yeah.
But now I'm on Woman's Hour.
You are. You're on Woman's Hour.
I'm on bloody Woman's Hour.
You on Strictly. Oh my God, you are fabulous on Strictly.
Oh my God. That was a moment. We have a right to go, it's all good, grateful. This idea that we have to be grateful all the time is really is debilitating.
It's hurtful in many ways, because we work very hard. We have to, like you said, our parents told us we have to work really, really hard to get to where we are. And we're working hard. And we're paying into the system constantly. You speak about how your parents did that, like as immigrants. They came to this country, they worked really hard. They paid so much back into the system in the form of taxes, and they're told to be grateful. We're told to be grateful. It's like it's not like we're not contributing members of this society.
Yeah, which is nonsense. And it's also really sad because it's not the truth. The identity of the country is not built on truth. We need a reckoning. We need to, and there's lots of really angry people who are blaming migrants for things that aren't their fault. And it's because their sense of self is built on something that's just not true. They're given a half truth about the history of the country. And that's why, again, the partition program, how few people knew about the partition of India. Like everyone knows about the railways and the soul, and the, all the, and the education system and the judiciary and all the great things that Britain did. But hang on, these are all the things that they put in place so that they could get soldiers in and goods out. And they were there for 300 years, and yet nobody talks about what happened when they left. Isn't that really telling? So yeah, I'm just delighted that we are having this conversation. I'm delighted that, books like Satnam Sanghera's Empire Land exist, and that there's like great people out there talking about stuff, Afua Hirsch, Akala, like across the board, and keep these conversations going. I mean, look at what happened with the football. Oh my God,
Yeah.
And I did an interview on Woman's Hour that week because after the horrendous racism that 3 footballers faced, there was a petition set up to kick. So basically, if anybody is racist, online or offline, towards footballers, they are banned for life. And the petition was set up by 3 women in hijabs, called themselves the 3 hijabis, who are mad football fans. So I did this interview. I know, right?
I love it.
Badasses. And what was great was they came on Woman's Hour to talk to me about it. And I looked up and I was like, wow, look, 4 brown women on Radio 4, and none of us are here to talk about being brown.
Right. Which is, again,
I don't know where we started and how I got there, but anyway, we got there.
Love it. I actually really love it because one of the things I was really looking forward to in this conversation was just like going everywhere, because there's so much. Like I wrote 20 questions down, and I was like, I still feel like I have more to say. So I feel like we need to have this conversation in person eventually.
Yeah, we do, because I want to talk to you about your life as well. I want to know about your moving over here, because you're a pioneer. You've done it on your own.
Yeah.
And how are Mum and Dad about it? Are they okay?
Dad had, in all means, he had at that time disowned me when I decided to do this. And it was really hard because my dad was my hero and he's one of my favorite people on the planet. And then he did that. And it was a very intense form of heartbreak that I don't think I've quite got over. We're fine now because now I have success. And the other thing that we don't talk about is loads of brown families will alienate or disown their kids. But the minute those children have success, suddenly those kids are, they're valuable again. They're an asset. They didn't bring shame onto the family. And I think there's a really big conversation to be had over there in the community about, because I'm not the only one who has this story.
No, you're so right. You're absolutely right, Nikita. And it needs to be spoken about. That's absolutely heartbreaking. I'm so sorry. And that is, but it's like so many of us know that. And also, you're right about the success thing. I think the reason I was able to call this stuff out and say it is because of the position. Because I have a platform where I can use my voice, and I want to use it. I've always had passion, right? Passion is amazing. Passion is really important in life. But now I feel like I've got purpose, and I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm having the most important conversations ever. Like this is the most important conversation for me. It's like actually to make change, to talk about what's the legacy we leave behind, to kind of talking to young women and young men and anyone who needs to hear it about how they're not alone, right?
Absolutely.
I felt so lonely growing up.
Yeah.
I felt like it was just me, and I was just so confused. And you're not alone. And there's a whole army of us out there who know that experience. Right. Oh, look at this.
That's such a lovely comment over there. Yeah. You're talking my mind. It's true. It's true. You're so open in your book. It's so important to have these conversations. And this is fire. So good to hear South Asian women roar. Yes. Yes, it's empowering.
Sangeeta. Hey, Sangeeta. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Sangeeta's amazing.
She's amazing. She's amazing. Soul sister.
Really is like Sunita, who had messaged earlier as well. Absolutely amazing. Fantastic poet. So it's just like there's so many of us in the arts, especially South Asian women in the arts are all badasses.
Yes.
All of us.
And it's really important that we tell our stories. That is a real space where we stories are all we have. And I keep coming back to it because I recognize that our stories aren't told anywhere. So we have to, and we have to do it to leave our stories behind, but also to honor the women that came before us, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It is one of those things that we kind of have to keep having these conversations, because I don't want any more lonely little girls. I don't want any more queer, lonely brown girls, little girls growing up feeling the way that I did. And the same way you don't want it either, which is why the beginning and end of the book, where you're writing to that little girl, is so important. Just so everyone can see the book again.
Yes.
Look at how beautiful it is.
I know, right? I didn't even look like this on my own wedding day. This is like the most dolled up I've ever been for the
You look gorgeous in all of those photos.
Oh my God.
It's a beautiful book, and I cannot stop recommending it to everyone I know. Staple in every South Asian household. South Asian women need this book because, oh my God, it's about us. South Asian men need this book because there's a lot of unlearning that needs to be done over there. But also, like, I think this book will speak to everyone who picks it up, because there's so much in it. So thank you. And it's easy to see why it's a Sunday Times bestseller.
Woo, get that in there. Nikita, I adore you. Thank you so much. I can't wait to give you a hug, an actual real life hug in person. Wow, we can carry on talking. We have to just do it in real life.
We do. We have to do a proper like meetup, like a lunch or drinks.
We'll
do drinks.
Yeah, man, drinks. Come on.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much, Anita.
And thank you to everyone who watched. And let me know what you think.
Thank you for all the lovely comments. Thank you so much.
Great.
Amazing.
Thank you. Do we leave? What happens now?
Yeah, what happens now? Even now, or do we leave?